series put on by PCCD. We welcome you all in Zoom land and in person. And today we have Ernesto Nery, who is going to present a wonderful presentation on, I'll let him say the whole thing.
On using art to cope with LGBTQ oppression and intersectionality. So, but a lot of it's going to be my experience and a lot of storytelling. So I hope everybody's ready.
Welcome, everybody.
So initially, I was planning, as I have done in the past, to do a whole performance of bits of my life and really tell a story in terms of how me, as one who identifies as gay, comes into intersectionality or oppression. And with that, you know, I dance and I perform and I act, and I realized that, you know, I think what really makes me, what's really gotten me this far and really helped me overcome initially what I had was a disability of speaking, or an issue with speaking. So I had a hard time pronouncing words and really articulating what was in my head. So to even come up here and to present and to have the courage and strength to do that every time really said a lot in terms of why I wanted to do kind of a bare bones presentation and speak on behalf of where it's coming from, my heart. So I'll tell you a little bit about my my background. And if we look at intersectionality, there's a number of different identities that overlap that really create difference of oppression and the difference of just challenges in which people would encounter depending on how many different identities apply to them. And a lot of times I would speak in terms of my challenges growing up as a child and growing up and going to school and hanging out with my peers. And it was as if I was by myself, like I was the only one on this planet. So now I like to tell people that I am from Mars because what you think, you know, is not necessarily true. So background about my parents. Both of my parents are undocumented. My dad is from the Philippines. My mother, she's from El Salvador. And two different reasons that they came to the United States. My mother, she was 12 years old. Her life was being threatened. And I don't know why, I don't have a reason as to why her life was being threatened, but she and her best friend crossed all the way Central America, Mexico, and made it to, somehow made it to Los Angeles. My dad, I don't know how, he never really, me and my dad weren't really close. But I feel I respect him in the sense where he, as you know, coming as an immigrant and really dealing with challenges that, you know, I could never know, but the fact that he was my father and the fact that we were able to kind of go for full circle last year, then that really says a lot in terms of how I look at people and how things are perceived. So going back, mother's from El Salvador. She met my dad in Los Angeles, and she was about 12 years old. My dad was about, let's just say he was well over drinking age. Now, the reason my mom left El Salvador was because she was for her life. My dad left because he was running away from his wife. And my mother didn't know about that. So eventually my mother, she got pregnant and she was deported. She was deported back to to El Salvador with my older sister. And I know my mom would always mention that she tried so hard to make it across again so that she could have my sister in the US, so that my sister, no, this is my sister, would have a better life. And she did. So looking at both my mom and my dad and thinking about intersectionality, my mom was deported and my dad was also undocumented, but he was never deported. My mom was deported 3 times. When we were growing up, my mother used to be questioned a lot, walking with me and my sister, asking how much she charges to babysit, to pay for her kids. And a funny thing happened to my dad one time when we were in Tijuana, and somehow me and my mom got separated from my dad and my little brother, and he was trying to cross the border, but they wouldn't allow my dad to cross the border with my little brother, his son, because they didn't think that my brother was his son. Interesting enough, I get all the time when people refer to my brother, they refer to my little brother as the Latin brother, the Latino brother. And I'm like, so he's the Latin one and I'm not. So even though we have the same parents and we have the same kind of identities, and sometimes I tend to not explain that or go too much into that, because a lot of times I feel that sometimes it's hard to really identify or understand unless you're in that situation. But I have these examples because there's that discrimination that comes into play where clearly it's unique to the situation and the background. So I was fortunate enough to have a background from the Philippines and also from El Salvador. I was unfortunate in that I won't say unfortunate, but I had some tough experiences that made me stronger. I don't know if it was my mother that was going through things or what was on her mind, but she was never loving to me. She was the opposite. So she'd always yell at me. She would say things like, "Why were you born? I wish I never had you. Why are you making me get up to take you to school? You can take the bus." And I was about 8, 9 years old. My dad, he was really abusive. And I didn't know why at that time, why he was so mad. It's like I would get up and my dad would say, "Stop doing that." And I didn't know what I was doing, you know? And it was, looking back, it was anything that was associated with being feminine. So if my hands were a certain way, my dad would slap me, would push me down and say, "Why are you acting like that? Are you a girl?" If I said I like the color pink, my dad would go off on me. I remember saying that it was at a family party. I said I like the color pink, and he got mad at me, and then he started mocking me with everybody at the party. And it's funny because as a kid, kids grow up and they explore and they learn who they are and they become who they are. They become these great, everybody becomes who they are because of their experiences. And so I was literally in fear on how to act. So I was very cautious about what the people around me, what the situation involved and how I was going to act. And that basically set the tone for most of the rest of my life. I was always doing things to not necessarily receive validation, but because I felt that it was right, because in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to get punished. So there's my abusive dad. There's my mom who didn't love me. And then there was Catholic school. I don't know how my mother did it, but she managed to pay for me and my siblings to go to a private school in Toluca Lake. And I remember seeing the amount of the tuition per month, and it was like $3,000 in like the 1980s. And my mom, she was undocumented, she was cleaning houses. And as a matter of fact, that's how she heard about that school in Toluca Lake, was because she was cleaning houses and one of her clients had recommended this really good school. I mean, I was surrounded by students or kids who were always bragging about being in movies or being actors or actresses or magazines or whatnot. And I'm not just saying that. They would have their magazines, they would have their movies. I'd see them everywhere. It was all these. And I remember going to friends' houses and just thinking how big the houses were. And I didn't know what a Porsche was, but I remember the same car was like parked all around the house. And I would always get, if I had interaction, there was a couple of things that would come across from my classmates in elementary. And that was, "Why are you so dark? Why do you look different?" And I don't know how to, or I'm not American or something. And that was the first time I ever heard the word beaner. I didn't know hate words at the time. I was a kid, didn't know hate words. I remember going to school one time. I guess I had bleach marks all over my shirt, and kids from different grades, because it was about 30 kids per class. We were outside and they're all calling me Bleach Boy. And I was like, I was really proud. I was like, "Yeah, Bleach Boy." Like, I was just really excited. And I just remember my older sister coming in and she just was mad and she said, "Stop." And I didn't understand why she was so mad, but it was because they were mocking me. And I was thinking that it was that I was getting some kind of attention for once. I wasn't getting the ills for bringing the fish soup into class where everybody's eating Lunchables. I remember a time where the teacher, it was in second grade, and I remember second grade, I remember the teacher, and she had mentioned something, and it really got me excited because I felt like for once I could be like, I don't know, whatever normal was, whatever was okay. Because in my dad's eyes and in my mom's eyes, my mom didn't want me to be around, and my dad would always compare me to a girl, but then he'd say, but why can't you play sports like your sister? Or why can't you box like your sister? And I'm like, I think you answered that question. So it was second grade, and I remember getting excited about that. And so, we would write down our sins onto a paper, and then we would be forgiven. And the first thing that I wrote was that I was gay. At 9 years old, how do you know what that means? Or why would you even think that that was bad? I wrote it down on the paper and gave it to my teacher. And I don't know, it just, if I could remember the feeling, I mean, just the thought of it, I just remember being so excited, just really happy that I wasn't going to be gay anymore. Writings were on the wall. My dad comes home and he has the note in his hand. And that was one of the worst experiences, the worst times that I had been punished by my dad because he was because he received that note that I didn't think was going to get to him. I thought it was going to go and make me better for whatever reason. That from that point on, I literally didn't want to interact with people. I didn't want to associate with anybody because I was scared about how people would perceive me and what would happen to me. And it didn't get any better because my parents ended up divorcing, and I went from a wealthy private school to now a public school. And if you're in private school with all the wealthy kids who are saying that you're too dark, they're talking about, even the teachers and nuns were saying how bad public school is and how bad the kids are, and it was how it's going to be an awful time. And so I remember just missing the school bus because I was so scared about going to school because I was afraid that these non-private school kids were gonna be so bad. And it wasn't so bad, except that when I got into class, immediately I was already kind of pulled into a crowd of Asians and Filipinos, which was cool because I had never really interacted with Asians and Filipinos. So I was like, oh, wow, we look alike, so we can hang out and stuff. But what the bad part was, they were, either they were in gangs at the time or they were associated with gangs. And so they weren't really the best people to be with. But then looking back, I'm like, well, who is when they're growing up, right? You experience life, and then you do things and you learn from the hardships that happen. So I can't fault anybody for that, but it was an experience because I'm all about trying to fit in and not really fit in, but make sure I'm doing what's right within that situation. So I would wear white beaters and Dickies and and I remember it was Adidas, and thinking that was like a fashion statement. And so I would be walking home from school, and I would get constantly I say hit up, the term hit up, by guys who were either following me and trying to I don't know if they were trying to fight or whatnot, but they would say, "Where are you from?" And I'd say, like, from the San Fernando Valley. And they kind of just look at me like I'm weird. And there were other ones that were trying to, I guess, recruit. It was interesting. Like, they would follow me every day. And I remember like, it took a while for them to even come out the car and then try to recruit me into whatever gang they had. And I thought that was, I wanted to know why that was at the time. Like, why were they so interested in me? What was that? But I wasn't concerned about what they cared or that would make me feel better or anything. It's kind of interesting because I actually strayed away from gangs and whatnot. However, until I got into high school, and I remember I was again put into I don't know how it happened, but I was in, I guess, ESL courses, and I was bad at English and math. Somehow I was in a class with the kids from the magnet program. It was a long government magnet program, and they were bused in from like Brentwood, Southern California, or Beverly Hills. They were all wealthy and well off. And so they would always make fun of me because I was wearing, like, my clothes were always all tattered and they were old. And then the only new things I would get were from the swap meet. So I don't know if you're familiar with like Ben Davis or I can't think of the other terms, Jinkos, or no, I couldn't afford Jinkos. I had the fake ones, the Incos or something, and I had a DS. So we went. So I got my first job, and it was at Universal Studios, and I was super excited because I was working. I remember it was like 60 hours. I was like so proud that I was working and that I was getting a paycheck. And the moment I got my paycheck, I went to the malls, the Panorama Malls, like a one-story mall, and walked into a store and bought like 3 FUBU shirts for like, I want to see my whole paycheck. So it was like $300 or $400, right? And I was excited because, I finally got to buy clothes. I got to wear clothes that my peers were wearing. And I remember wearing a FUBU shirt. It was a baby blue FUBU shirt, white pants. I think they were the Incos. And I walked in, and one person stood up, and he said, and this is from people who I identify with because of how we look, Filipinos. I can't believe you're wearing that. That I would be embarrassed to wear that. Nobody wears FUBU anymore. And I took that shirt, and I went home, and I took all 3 shirts and threw them in the trash. And I remember my big sister being proud of me. She's like, "Hey, what'd you do with the shirts? What did your friends say?" And I didn't tell her anything because I was too embarrassed that I spent all that money all that time and just to be made fun of in class. It didn't end there because then I was I guess the seniors in the school or juniors were recreating this scene from Mean Girls where it was a burn book, and I was dreading it because I was so concerned about if there was anything on me, but I think everybody was. That was what everybody was concerned about what everybody else thought about them, which isn't best thing. So I remember a couple of girls just laughing, and then they go, "Look, your name's in there," and they said Ernesto was gay, and I didn't know what to think. Because my whole life I'm thinking this is wrong, and then my mom and my dad are shunning me, and then I am getting mocked and made fun of at school by my peers, and I don't really have any friends or anything, so I'm like literally like by myself, and I don't know why, but I had the courage to tell my dad that I was gay. I don't know why. I just felt like that's me, and I don't know what's wrong with it. And so my dad told me to get out the house and throw out my stuff. My mom was living with her husband at the time, and she refused to take me in. And so, my sister was already in college, but I think she was living with a roommate, and we didn't always communicate at that time, but I had nowhere to go. So it was the first time that I literally had like it was a shopping cart, and I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm going to sleep here in the park and try to find an excuse. If I had a friend or something, try to stay over their house. One teacher, I believe she caught on to it. I believe she knew what was going on because she stopped me, and she would always say hi, and she'd come by. She was just my English teacher, and she said, "Do you want to be on the speech and debate team?" And I was like, "No, I want to talk in front of people. That's no, right?" But she said, I remember her saying, "But you get to travel, and we practice late, and we buy food, and then when you travel, you get to stay in your own room, and you get, and I was like, but you get food at the practice, and you get food at where do you go?" And she was just telling me, like, they go to Arizona, they go to I don't know what was the other place. It was Washington, and so I figured, you know what, I can manage it. I can be that person who is trying to not get in trouble, so I can manage. I can figure out what I'm gonna do as a teenager. And so I got on it's called a forensics team. I know when I say forensics, people are like, "What's that?" Forensic speech and debate. And she pointed out things that I did in class that I didn't know that I was doing, but I would always get in trouble for. So I would always get in trouble for speaking out too loud. And so usually if I'm speaking out too loud, I'm really excited about something. And I've noticed that just if I see someone and they're talking and someone says, can you tone it down? I can see that I'm not the only one where that mode shifts. And for me, speaking was a gift in terms of now I want to speak and I want to speak to help communities that you know I identify with and that have struggled and really speak on behalf and do the best I can to really get the message out and empower people. But I was always getting in trouble for that. So two things I would do is smile because I wasn't allowed to show emotion. So I was always smiling. And I would always mimic voices because I had a hard time talking and I would always stutter and I had a speaking I had trouble pronunciating things, and I still do sometimes. Like when I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, oh no. But if I don't think about it, then it comes out, and I probably talk so fast because I'm so concerned about not getting it out correctly, or I don't know. But so I was able to manage being able to communicate and talk because this coach had brought me on, and as bad as I was, she was really encouraging, but maybe I wasn't as bad as I thought I thought I was. So she'd always give me funny pieces like John Leguizamo or what was another one? Basically things that had to do with just very comical because growing up, my the way I mimic voices was because I watched In Living Color. I remember wrestling. I remember you know, so I'd mimic the voices. So if there was a radio announcer in the script, well, you know, sábado in Madison Square Garden. I mean, it just came out naturally because that was the only way where I was really pronouncing or articulating words. And my last year, she gives me this piece and she says it's a very serious piece, and I totally overact it so that it's funny. And she goes, that's not how you performed it. So what she asked me to do was think about my situation. That's how I knew she knew. What's going on? What's going on with your brother? How do you feel? How do you feel when this happens and this happens? And when you're thinking that, can you think that while you're saying the words from the script? And so I don't know, it seemed like it started to just come out. You know, I learned how to, in forensics, you can't cry because it's considered, the tears considered a prop, but you can go close to, like, you can have your eyes watering. I would never take it seriously, and I was never really concerned about being in a competition, but she was always pushing me. She's always pushing me. But I was happy for that because it got me to really get out of the box and really become this person that can speak, that can articulate, that really has a passion for speaking, even though I get scared. Like if you saw me out there, I'm like freaking out, right? So she gave me this piece, and I remember this clearly where I was in the room and I'm performing this piece, and I remember one of the judges just kind of put her head up and just start watching, and that makes me uncomfortable when people like look at me or they give me eye contact. And so then the other one started to look up, and you know, all of a sudden I have like people engaged in the room, and I'm like, I don't know what to think, but this is just in my head. This part is, you know, it's like I saw light behind them, and it's like I got some kind of validation, and it was from people that I didn't even know. After that competition, I started to rank amongst top 3 within that category within our district. Eventually going to LA and taking on LA and winning LA, and then taking Southern California, winning Southern California. Got me all the way to nationals. I didn't even know what that was. I just knew it was another opportunity to eat and sleep, find a place to sleep. At nationals, National Forensic League, I believe there's about 2,000-3,000 competitors, but they can only get to that level if they beat out everybody within their areas. I didn't know how serious that was. I remember I didn't understand what an octa final was, what a double octa final was. I was just like, my name's on the list, so I have to go again. And so I got to semifinals, and I walk into the room, and I'm like, wow, you know, I'm here, but I just didn't know what to think other than like, I just want to go home, right? Um, when I walked in the room, there was this gentleman, white, and first thing he says is, oh, so we have a minority in the room. And I don't know what that meant, but I didn't look like everybody else in the room. And so I don't know if that was I didn't know if that was a compliment or if that was, but it really stuck in my head. Because I didn't feel good when he said it. So long story short is he ends up getting to the final round, and I end up ranking. It was a tie between 12th and 13th place. So I'm not happy about it. I'm like 12th or 13th, right? And my coach is trying to tell me, and she goes, "Do you realize how big that is? How far you've gotten?" And she's trying to. It didn't make sense to me until I look back now, where I see where I'm at, and I'm like, okay, it wasn't just the competition. It was like I took away a lot from that in terms of growing and building, and really coming to terms with myself, and now identifying with myself, because up until I was probably like in my late 30s, I know I'm that old. I'm not that old. So I was still doing the same thing. I was basically fitting in, whereas it meant nothing to me, and it ultimately started to hinder who I was and who I'm going to be. So that's why I put a lot of emphasis into using art as a coping mechanism. Just in my experience, and I'm sure in anybody's experience, we face instances of oppression, of intersectionality, and they're all over the place. And I found that I remember when I was homeless there, and the people that I was hanging out with, they were always drawing. They were always drawing, and they're drawing beautiful pictures. It wasn't just like graffiti and stuff, but there was always something. Anytime there was a situation where I had a hard time and there were people around, the one thing I noticed was that they were doing something artistic. They were dancing, they were singing, they were drawing, and the other thing I noticed is that there's community, and community helps support people, helps keep people going. And it kills me to see people on the streets or people who are struggling, or even asking for change. And someone says a comment like, "Why don't they get a job?" or "Why don't they do this?" And can't fault someone for being there. And we don't know where they came from. But ultimately, I think the biggest problem is that, and I'm just going to speak for myself, is that, as a community, we don't support, or we don't give a helping hand, or we don't do what we can, and I'm not saying, change laws, go lobby, I don't know, whatever it is, become a lawyer and support your cause. I'm saying just acknowledge someone, just validate someone, because that goes a long way. Even if there's something that maybe may not seem right. I know, just working with a lot of people in that situation, homeless or with mental illnesses or disabilities, it's sometimes the important thing that you may not understand what the heck they're saying, but the important thing is that, and what I've noticed is that whatever it is, listen and acknowledge, and just thank them for enlightening you, because that's ultimately, for me, doing that helps me grow and helps me learn. And so the take back I have, or the one thing I have, or I challenge people to do, is really support those around you. As students go through a lot. They go through a lot, and a lot of times they're facing all these challenges. They don't really talk about them sometimes, because there's so much going on. And something that seems as simple as going to admissions and asking for a form or checking on your status can be very difficult, and it can be very overwhelming and scary. Because I know when I was my first year, and I say this because I want to say that to anybody who feels that they can't get, that they're stuck or they're struggling. I don't know how. I have this real high achieving sister, and somehow I got into UC Riverside just out of high school, but I didn't know the value of high school or college, because my parents didn't support it. They didn't support education. I didn't even have counselors that told me that I could go to college. I remember my senior trip was going to the Budweiser factory. And you could get a beer, you could get a beer on the job. And that was, and not to say that that's a bad thing, but it was, I mean, you want to make sure that there's options, I would think. And so my first year in UC Riverside, I used to be so embarrassed about this, and I still am, but I say it because I think it's important, is that I couldn't make it past the first year because I couldn't pass remedial English or remedial math. And it was just one of those things that was just really humiliating. That you go and everything you do seems like it's coming down, but it's not about what's the problems that you're having or the challenges that you're having right now. It's about how you overcome them and how you you persevere. And the more I started to keep coming back and keep trying and get the support of people such as faculty, as staff on campus, the more I started to really be on my own and really take care of myself and grow. So that is my story. And I hope I didn't go too long. I'm looking at the time. Okay. But if there's any questions or anything, and yeah. Again, this was a last minute decision where I felt I wanted to speak from the heart versus do everything rehearsed, because my whole life has been rehearsed. I've been, trying to act like someone I'm not. And I wanted to do something that is just very authentic to me, but also very challenging, because I get scared. I get scared speaking, but I really appreciate that. So, and thank you for the opportunity, PCD committee, and everybody else, have a wonderful afternoon.
And so thank you.
Yeah.
This was wonderful,
Placer.
powerful. Thank you for exposing your heart to all of us and your experience.
Appreciate it.
And I do want to open it up to questions, if anybody has questions. I also want to point out that you are the director of financial aid.
Yeah.
Is that your role?
Yeah, I'm the director of financial aid.
Over at BCC.
Yeah.
So there is a gap between Riverside and how you're here.
Yeah.
Can you address that maybe a little?
Yeah,
bit?
absolutely. And so, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, I didn't make it past the first year in UC Riverside. Somehow Cal State LA took me in. And that, I remember them having really great programs. I was exposed to EOPS, and that played a big part, but I felt like the support at Cal State LA was more catered to what I needed in that sense, right? Not to say that UCR's support wasn't that great, but I just didn't know what to do. Whereas probably because of UCR, I kind of navigated, but then had people show me around. And really what was getting me through the classes and through just anything was being able to talk, being able to articulate. And that meant, I wasn't quiet in class. I was talking. I was always asking questions now, whereas before I wasn't interacting. I was just doing whatever anybody told me. And I got the confidence to, like each year, I remember just feeling good about acing my classes or getting a B and then graduating. And then right out of college, I started applying for jobs. And it was the ability to talk and think and analyze, whereas I didn't have that prior to getting into college, that really got me into my position. My first position was at DeVry University. So I was like a financial aid, I don't know, something in financial aid, but I eventually working at DeVry, okay, so financial aid, people are gonna get mad at me, but when I was in high school or college, I was thinking, oh, maybe I can work in financial aid because all they do is take in papers, right? And so, because I'm not thinking about like work, or I don't know how, I didn't comprehend what it entails, what the position entails. I'm thinking you just take in work and that's it. But at DeVry, the tuition was really high. And I remember seeing families come in and they were excited to see their kid going to college, which I thought was odd, which was for some reason, strange reason, because my parents were like, why don't you just keep on working at Domino's Pizza or Baskin Robbins? And so I thought that was okay. The other thing I saw was that some of these families couldn't afford to pay for the what at the time $30,000 tuition, and I could see their excitement, but I could see the hurt in their face, like the stress, and it bothered me because you know, I speak because I want to help the world, right? I can't do it by myself, but in those situations, I feel for them, and I feel like no, that you know, it's like in that role, I wanted to say, well, you might want to go somewhere else, you know, it might be cheaper, and maybe try community college, but you know, I can't do that at DeVry. So instead of doing that, I applied at a Riverside Community College and got the job as a financial aid analyst, and was there for about 3 or 4 years, and really kept on moving up in financial aid. Never thought I could because with doing everything with getting through college, when I got into financial aid, it was a beast. It was literally like, I don't understand anything and I'm in this job. And eventually I just kind of moved up and learned a lot of things, but with financial aid, and I'm sure with other programs on within the community college system and within the state, regulations are changing. There's different things that are being updated. There's different requirements that need to be met. And with financial aid, especially this year, it's been tough because there's been so many changes, and it's adapting as an administrator, working with your staff, and then trying to be in compliance with federal, state, and educating students in terms of the changes. And really, that's the important thing, is getting students to understand the process so that they could be transferable in that sense, where they can navigate, you know, and they can manage, because as a college, as an institution, you know, we do so much to assist, but just in my thinking, I think for me, things that clicked in my head got me up, you know, because I was able to basically figure things out. Like if someone were to show me a math problem, I'd be like, I don't know how to do that, but then you explain it to me and it's like, okay, that makes sense. Same idea, and then you could do another math problem, right? It's you take what you learn and you move on, and then you don't need to rely so much on just the support services, but really, and I'm thinking in terms of not just college, but like, you know, life in general, or surviving, because I guess apparently with me, I think of the big picture, and I tend to forget the small details, but I'm thinking like homelessness, like people who are on the streets, like how do we help? Well, maybe this might help, you know, the one less person really knows how to get their way and understand how to move up, be successful in different, you know, on their terms. Yeah, that would be. Thank you.
I could ask you about 5 other questions, but I want to look at our time for 1 second. How are we doing?
15 minutes. So
Oh, great. I have one question, then I want to, but is anybody dying in the audience?
You're getting applause and comments.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
So I want to ask you something. I'm in the LGBTQ community as well. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more, explaining to people about intersectionality and how that informs also how you work with your students.
Yes, and that I love that question. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up, which I was talking was within our students and intersectionalities, there's students that will and I can use just identities in general, who will are trying to really come into terms and identify and understand, and I think with intersectionality, we can't assume that every student, if they're Black, if they're Latino, if they're Asian, that they're being that there's a possibility that they could be oppressed in a certain way, whereas you take it into account intersectionality, and there is different and I want to say situations in which a student can be oppressed or feel like they're not welcome, or they're not part of the institution, and I say really kind of turn an area, I say the area of understanding and growth and excitement to something that can be very traumatic, because an experience they had. But it's being open to students, listening, and that's my thing, is just listen to the students, validate, acknowledge, and for whatever it is. And that's why I say, like, because there's been times when I'll have a conversation with someone who's it's just on the street and they're talking, and you know, I don't know what they're talking about, but I question it, you know, because I don't know, and I communicate and I acknowledge, and I say, hey, you know what, that's a good point, or you know, it's validating, and really there's a reason why someone's talking and why they're doing things is because either there's something that's on their mind and they just need to get it out, or maybe there's something that they're trying to figure out for themselves. And sometimes it's just getting someone to listen. And I think that's the important thing is I'm in front of a classroom full of judges and they're looking up at me, and it's like a feeling that I never felt before because I was always feeling bad. But it's and this is a term I'll say a lot too, is just being positive, spreading the positivity and making sure that whatever the situation is, whatever the case is, that we acknowledge people, we thank them, and then we help them grow. I'll use my dad as an example because we went through a lot. I didn't want to talk to him. I hadn't talked to him for years, and then just last year I met with him, and it was a full circle moment because he was asking me about what I'm doing for work, and he was telling me about nursing, and I told him I want to be a nurse, and he finally stopped arguing with me. And then he goes, well, what are you doing? I go, well, I work in financial aid, and then I speak in public, and so I speak and I dance, and then he says, you dance? I want to see you dance, right? And then I was like, well, Dad, I play you when I perform. And then he got quiet, and he was like, okay. And then he goes, and what do you talk about? And I go, being gay and LGBT. And then he goes to the door, he looks around and he closes it. And I go, that's a step up, because he before he would be so upset, and this time he was kind of like, okay, well, there was his own thing, but at least he's listening to me, at least as his son, and he's proud of me. And as much he didn't seem like he was bothered by it, and he seemed like he was genuinely like excited for me as a person, and where I was going. It's the first time I've seen him kind of not be so stuck on how he hit on his expectations, on how things should be in his eyes. He was open to listening to me, saying, even going back and forth, we were having a conversation, but it wasn't, we weren't arguing with each other. He was just telling me, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Why are you talking to people? I go, well, because it's, if I like to do it and stuff, then maybe I can, if I can't make money doing it, at least I can help someone else make money, hopefully, And so it ended up being one of the coolest times I had with him, because and that's why I say, so I tend to go off tangent, but that is a full circle moment. So just because something negative, or I saw something as negative, affected me in this way, it actually helped me grow. And I think that even if people are coming at you, and even if there's negativity, there's something that they did wrong, I think that can be, and this is just me, I think you can bring it back with positivity and say, thank you. I hope it works out for you. I'm sorry that this happened, but it can be better. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ernesto. That's wonderful. Other people have a question? Either in the Zoom, how are we doing in the Zoom room?
Just lots of love.
Okay.
So if there's no questions, I have one more. What's our time?
Are you okay? We'd love to have one.
Yeah, I'm like.
Yeah.
So I do have one more question about, so moving from like not being able to find your voice, moving into forensics, and now moving into performance and intersectionality of identities, how has that freed you up to be able to express your full voice?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, maybe I shouldn't say that, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Well, I learned a lot. In theater, I was initially I was in theater, arts and dance, and it's a lot of work, a lot of time without getting paid, and then it's on top of that, you need to train yourself in the different areas of theater, and it's not just covered through your institution. You still got to work and perform, and it didn't seem manageable to me. It was a passion of mine, but I think what really got to me was that I was getting a lot of either smaller roles or roles where I would play like 10, 20 different people. And so I laugh because I'm like, I'm proud, that's me. And so I remember there was this one audition call for a show called Dog Eaters, and it was for a Filipino cast. And I remember going in and auditioning and just really killing it because I was just so excited. And I remember the two casting directors were telling me, you were really good and you had these moments and we just love this and stuff, but we're really looking for someone who is a Filipino identity, who has who has the features, you know, that they can, and I was like, okay, I get that I'm not Latino, but then when it comes to theater, I get the Latino role. So I'll get the, yeah, I'll get the gangsters, I'll get yeah, I always get a Latino role, but then if like, there's an example where I went to a club in Hollywood and it was Latinos and so this happens a lot. I don't know why, but someone or a couple guys randomly went up to me and they said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? Well, this isn't a club for you." And well, why? And they said, "Because you're not Latino." And I'm like, I didn't know you had to be Latino to be in any club here. And so, but I mean, I've gotten it vice versa too. I've gotten it where I've gone to a club and with my Asian friends, and so I've been told we've been escorted out because and this is right when we walked in. I just hear a couple of people saying that there's dirty Asians here, and it's like how do you deal with those things, or how can I like deal with that without having to be mad or having to keep cool and really kind of level up over that, and it's through performing or acting, and so and dancing too. Dancing, and the reason why I added dance was because I can perform and I can communicate without having to say words, and I feel that a lot of times people are trying to say things or trying to say what's going on and no one's listening. And so art gives that outlet in terms of how you can convey that emotion or how you're feeling, and it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I can put something out and no one will get it, and that's fine, but there'll be one or two people that will be like, "I totally get you," or I was there too. And I'm like, we didn't communicate and say anything, and I'm just dancing, and this person knows exactly what was going through my mind. And I think that's the beauty of art, is that there's a level of communication that's nonverbal and that is very powerful and very beautiful and very healing. And that's really how I keep myself when I have time, is leveled and grounded, but also trying to be innovative of how I use art to not just audition or be in a show, but to send a message, which I think for me is very close to me and important.
Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
great. And is there are you performing now, or can we see you somewhere?
I'm not performing now. I've done presentations. The last couple presentations was Encore, the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and then APAHI, Asian Pacific. I think it's Americans of Higher Education. It's all about education. And then I was supposed to do Haku. I got really sick. So I wasn't able to do that. But in terms of theater, I want to get back into theater and performing. I have to focus on my job now because it's just a lot of work. But I do have projects that I do at home. Puppetry is one of them, right? I went to puppetry school and just kind of was fascinated by it. And so now I have ideas in terms of how to get puppets and how to really use that to educate people, not just people who are in dire situations, but their peers, their family and friends, because again, it's about the support that we need to give each other, or that they need in order to move out of a situation that could be dire or hurtful. So, but yeah, nothing coming up. I did get two nonprofit awards though from Financial Aid. I think it was C-SPAN and CASPA. One was the Hall of Fame, and the other one was the Creative Leadership. Can you see it? Yeah, I don't want to say it wrong. I don't know who's watching.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I just wanted to thank you for being here.
Thank you
We
for the
might
opportunity.
be setting you up now to be in
Flex day.
Flex Day. I'm like,
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Flex Day performance. That'd be amazing. Anyway, I want to thank all of you in Zoom land. Thank you for attending. Thank you for those who are going to watch after this has happened. Thank you for being in the live audience. Of course, number one, thank you, Ernesto, for
Pleasure.
being here and basically, exposing your soul there and telling us your whole history. It's really beautiful
Thank you.
and vulnerable and honest and
Yes.
just and positive at the same time. And I'm glad your dad turned around, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, full circle, beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
And
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the TV crew for being here. Thank you, Dale, for Bill Nevada over here for IT and everybody else. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. You closing thoughts? Oh, you're on it, Mike.
Yeah, I'm on mic, so there we go, yeah. It was a cool like idea though. No, anybody who tuned in, thank you, I appreciate you. Hopefully you take something back and really do something positive, exciting, even for someone you don't know. Because you have the ability to change the world and it's with spreading the love, so thank you.